right. You know?
Good evening. The council will please come to order. If we all stand for prayer, please, led by Alderman Nash.
Almighty God, we ask for your blessing upon the members of this council as we assemble here in this chamber to conduct the ongoing business of our city. With your guidance, we will strive to ensure that all our decisions are for the common good, and in your inspiration will instill respect, compassion, and thoughtfulness in all of our deliberations. Give us the strength and wisdom to lead by example as the people's representatives, and that peace and harmony will mark all our proceedings and keep us faithful to the trust placed in us by the citizens of our community. Amen.
Amen. Alderman Bittencourt, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You.
Old business resolutions, number 1, relative to the adoption of the budget for fiscal year 24-25.
Thank you. If it would please, two members to please put this on the floor. Is there such a motion? Alderman Bencourt, second Alderwoman Hayes. Is there discussion? President Pro Tem.
Mayor, I'd like to offer an amendment to the budget. We all have a document in front of us. It says City of Norwich potential amendments to tentatively adopted budget 2024-25, or I should say tentatively adopted 2024-25 budget. It's Exhibit A through F. I make the motion that we amend the budget according to these exhibits.
Thank you. Is there a second? Alderman Singh, second. Further discussion or explanation, please? Would you wish to delineate further for the public record?
So at the last meeting, I told the council and the public that there was much work to do. This amendment, or this series of amendments, is the embodiment of that work. Exhibit A is an adjustment, or actually 3 adjustments to the revenue side. That is not the purview of the council. Those are 3 items that came from the city manager and the comptroller's office. So we're just offering those up as a change, but that was not driven by the members of this council. And then exhibits B through F are changes to either expenditure or the allocation to Norwich Public Schools and to the capital budget.
Thank you. Is there further discussion at this time? Just for the public's edification, Exhibit B of this particular amendment references the Volunteer Firefighters Relief Plan, and it notes that the actuarial valuation that was completed and has been accepted by the Relief Fund Committee at its May meeting this year. I want the public record to be fully aware of that. Exhibit C increases the funding for the Board of Education, $407 new dollars, approximately $1 million. That's the value of $1 million under the new reval. There's a item adding $25,000 for the Sachem Fund. And I can tell you that the Sachem Fund held a meeting again recently, which hasn't happened in a number of years. And I believe there's $93,000 within their purview. This will be added to that. I believe that's the intent of the makers of the motion. And there's a variety of other reductions kind of across the board, a number of departments, public safety, public works, you name it, senior center. Not huge amounts, although there's a public works delaying a vacant position hire. That does save $50,000. And also there's a delay of a hire of a new PSAP supervisor position of $59,000 savings and change. and that saves $200,852. Exhibit F then takes a look at the capital budget, and it makes some reductions. Again, the Norwich Fire air supply system, it's reduced by $15,000. These aren't large values, but when you add them up, along with some of the other savings, you get to the end of Exhibit F, and it places $207,546 to replace Squad A. Clearly, everyone understands that's not enough money to buy a fire truck. But there's other action coming soon to address that issue. Those are the items of this particular exhibit. Does anyone have any questions? Alderwoman Gould.
What is the rationale to not replacing the SCBA cascade system for Chatfield Fire Department?
Oh, please, whoever would like to, certainly, you may.
Both chiefs sat before us at budget hearings. I asked him directly if the system needed to be replaced because it was failing or was in imminent danger of failing, and he said no, it was just something that they wanted to do now because the system is aging, but it has not failed. So I took that to mean that it did not need to be funded immediately.
And one other question, the kitchen hood replacement for Chatfield Fire. Why would we not be doing that now? Chatfield Fire Department has been cited multiple times by the fire marshal that this hood system needed to be replaced immediately.
So that has been a topic of conversation at two different public safety meetings, and at those two different public safety meetings, we heard two different answers. All right, first, that the fire marshal required that the hood be replaced if the kitchen were to be used at all, and even just for members. And then we got a second answer that was somewhat vague, but similar. And then when we addressed that with the fire chief, the Norwich paid fire department chief, who is the fire marshal for the city, he stated, as best I recollect, and he's here tonight and he can clarify, but he stated that that understanding or that position was inaccurate, that only if the firehouse was going to continue to do fundraisers and serve the public did the hood and the other improvements need to be made. And again, choosing priorities is a tough one, and I personally put forward that that was not a critical priority.
You still have the floor, Alderwoman Gould.
So I would just, as long as Chief Montoya is here, I would like to hear from him, please.
Good evening, Chief Montoya, Norwich Fire Department. President Pro Tem is correct. The original citation from Chief Scand when he was a fire marshal, excuse me, was that the hood, based on use, was either compliant, cooking for members, or non-compliant, cooking commercially or for the public.
Excuse my ignorance, but what's the difference if you're cooking for a member versus the public?
I guess I would, and I will get you statute tomorrow, but our code tomorrow. The analogy I would make would be a kitchen stove in your home versus a commercial kitchen. There are different code requirements for hoods and other things.
So if you're cooking for 20 members, that's okay? If you're cooking for 30 members of the public, it's not?
By code, correct.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any further questions on the amendment that's before us at this time? I have a question, and I raised the issue earlier when I was explaining the amendment. It says replace Squad A, $207,546, but that's not the total cost of that proposed truck, is it? Can you outline for the people in the meeting and anyone listening what the actual cost will be if these funds are allocated, set aside towards that purchase? Can you share that, please?
Chief Montoya has stated that the estimate is $1.2 million.
Thank you for that answer. $1.2 million. If you think about the authority this council has, anything over $800,000 usually goes, or must go to referendum. And if you look at the impact of these cuts to the capital budget, and I can tell you there's more cuts to the capital budget coming next week. This isn't where it ends. This is just the beginning. Spending $1.2 million on a fire truck seems very excessive. Can you tell us what that truck is used for, Mr. Pro Tem?
I think that is a question for the fire chief.
Well, if you would wish, certainly. Thank you. Chief, I'm sorry to bother you, but you're here and I appreciate that.
All right, Squad A is the primary fire response vehicle for the city. I sent out the data from 2023 incident to, I believe, all council members and yourself, sir, with the numbers of total calls, EMS calls, fire calls. Squad A averages a little over 1,000 calls per year, yet it has the lowest percentage of EMS runs because, again, primary fire rescue. Carries specialized rescue, technical rescue, vehicle extrication equipment, and other items on it. And it is also the primary pumper for the city.
A couple of months ago, during the Public Safety Committee meeting, you described Truck 2 and 4. And what was the term you described them as at this time? Was the word spare?
They are spare, unstaffed pieces that go into service when another piece is out of service. For example, Engine 2 is out of service at Fleet Garage, has been for about a week, and Engine 4 is in service in Greenville.
And was your intent to share that with the Public Safety Committee in lieu of potentially replacing Squad A? And are we to then take it that it's your request that those two trucks be removed from service, which is something the fire study said we needed to do? I mean, I appreciate your truthfulness a couple months ago. I mean, I was very thankful for that, always am. Is it your intent, if this truck is replaced, Squad A that is, to ask the city manager and the council to remove those from our fleet?
They are not related. The removal of the other apparatus was part of the apparatus reduction discussion, the ad hoc committee. To somewhat answer your question, sir, traditionally, when the squad has been replaced, it has been rolled down to another position, a less busy piece, either Engine 3 or Engine 6 at the time, or Engine 2. Now that Squad A has, I don't want to say exceeded its life because it's still in service, but it's a toss-up from fleet maintenance on whether Engine 4, a 1995 E1, or Squad A, a 2001, would be the acceptable spare piece if we were to maintain a spare piece. The fire study did call for the removal of Engine 4 and Truck 2 from service as spare pieces, but again, you know, this week is a perfect example, and last week, when an engine's out of service, it needs to be replaced. In the past, when we've had two engines out of service, we'd borrowed an engine from Yannick. They've been gracious to loan us an engine. So we think we have a plan there if we need to. But this plan with Squad A isn't directly related to the spare pieces, but it certainly could tie into it.
I appreciate, again, your candor. You raised the point that there are other trucks in service available So the question I ask again is the dependency on holding spares, which the study said we shouldn't do, because there's a cost to taxpayers when you do that. With that knowledge, and with the fact that on the first tone, you often may be calling in a volunteer department now, at the same time, you're rolling for the first time to a structure fire now. I would say that your assessment 2 months ago was pretty on the point, that they're unnecessary to remain in the fleet. And quite frankly, I'll speak for only myself, were that to happen, my objections to replacing Squad A would pretty much go away. Although I do question the cost, $1.2 million. And we know that won't be enough.
I think that our truck committee, we have a truck committee for the city, made up of firefighters and fire officers, that they've done more than due diligence in pricing that apparatus out. And if I could remind yourself, sir, and the council, that when we first requested Squad A, I want to say it was around $680,000. About 5-6 years ago, Chief Scan requested it. Each year that I've requested it, of the past 5 years that I've been chief, it has gone up. The COVID impact drove that price even significantly higher. And 1.2 is actually a fair price for the truck right now. And I confidently believe that that is plenty of money, that we wouldn't go over that. We've worked the details, we've worked the equipment and the specs on the truck, and the needs for a special rescue for the truck, the equipment that it carries. So I don't have that concern, sir. As to your point for the spares being a burden on the taxpayers, they're spares. They're sitting in the garage, they're maintained, they're checked, but they're not rolling unless they're needed and another piece is out of service. So there's a minimal expense there, and I would put my trust in fleet maintenance and the director, John Raymond, that if there's a repair on engine 4 or truck 2, that he doesn't think the apparatus is worth that, he'll make that decision.
I appreciate that you point out the value of the people over the maintenance and their expertise and years of experience. So should they come to the council in the future and say we should not continue, you would support that decision by him,
Yes, sir.
whether it's 2 or 4?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Excuse, Mr.
I'm sorry, thank you very much for your time, coming up twice. I just have a quick statement, and I'll recognize you, Alderman Singh. Oh, you want to question him too?
Yes, sir.
Well, please, go right ahead.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Chief. Quick question, the other 2 apparatus that are in use, what is the shape they are in, or how old those are? Because they are the one who kind of doing heavy lifting in the meantime.
The spare apparatus that are in use right
No,
now
the
are
other
the
ones.
other frontline pieces?
Frontline pieces.
The next one to replace, or be requested to replace, which isn't too far off for the city, not speaking for the other groups, would be Engine 2, which is a 2007. So 17 years of service. Engine 2 is the second busiest engine in the city. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's out of service currently for some work at fleet maintenance. It had a major engine overhaul just a few months back. So it's going to be coming on the horizon shortly, but that would be the next 2. Engine 3 is a 2013, pretty reliable, good piece, third busiest piece in the city, but that's good. The next major bite for Norwich Fire anyways would be Truck 1, but Engine 2 would be the next priority.
So can Squad A eventually can even replace one of those 2 trucks?
Not the current Squad A.
Not the current one?
No.
But the new one will have all bells and whistles to cover.
It would, again, following past practice of rolling Squad A down through the lineup. But generally, the past, I'm going to say the E1 and the Han before it, both went into service as a spare instead of as another frontline piece. Probably in my early days, in the early 90s, Squad A was replaced and it took over as Engine 6 or Engine 2 or even Engine 3. But the last 2 cycles, that hasn't happened. It's gone into service as a spare piece.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else need to speak with our chief at this time? Alderwoman Gould, see your hand.
2 questions, please. So if Squad A was replaced, you would keep Squad A. You're saying you would keep Squad A as a spare piece?
I would let John Raymond make that decision, and again, to the earlier question from the mayor, if we were to maintain spare pieces or follow some of the recommendations in the study and eliminate them, that would be a factor as well.
And speaking of the study, didn't they recommend that Squad A be decommissioned?
Not in the rightful way, but yes.
Well, whether you agree with them or not, but was that not one of the recommendations?
It was one of many, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, President Pro Tem, please.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions for the chief, so unless anybody else does, you can.
I'm good, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, chief. So, with regard to what the study says about Squad A, they talked about replacing it, not decommissioning it, but replacing it with a medical response vehicle. And I don't know how many members of the council are aware of this, but currently there is work being done by staff to do more to reduce the number of medical calls that the fire department responds to, that all of the fire departments respond to, and that is being facilitated mostly by the fact that we have a new operator of American Ambulance in Hartford Hospital, and they're doing a good job. So, so spending money to buy a medical vehicle that we wouldn't need, I think is a little bit more of a mistake. But we know that we need at least one engine pumper in the firehouse, whether it's the new Squad A or the new Engine 3 or the new Engine 4. You look at those three pieces that are all in headquarters, and any one of them, and this is not Joe DeLucia's opinion, this is what John Raymond has given us this information, any one of them, right, should be replaced so that the primary fire response engine that the chief described is a new piece of equipment just based on the age of what we currently have. They all could be spares, but what that tells me and what drove this initiative was that they're really not in the condition where they can be frontline pieces anymore. We're making it work. Fleet maintenance is knocking themselves out to make that work, but we're taking a risk by not replacing. So it doesn't matter what engine number we call it or what designation we give it. A new engine pumper needs to be in headquarters, and we've known that for as long as I've been on this council. Secondly, we talk about eliminating pieces because of the study. I would point to the 5 other pieces that are in the TCD that have all been, I don't know, there's no other way to say it other than just quietly let to drift to the back burner. Why haven't we gotten rid of those pieces? Those are straight up removal from service that should have happened 3 years ago when we got the study, should have happened 2 years ago, and didn't happen for a number of different reasons. So if we want to talk about decommissioning pieces, let's focus on that. Lastly, I just want to clarify one thing that the mayor said, because either he didn't finish his sentence or what he said was inaccurate. We do not need to get voter approval to spend more than $800,000 on anything. We need to get approval, we need to go to referendum if we are going to borrow more than $800,000, and that makes sense. But we're not asking, I'm not asking, this amendment is not asking to borrow, to add to the debt service that we hear so much about in the partisan narrative. What this is looking at this and say, well, sometimes it is better to borrow the money. because you can borrow the money at a rate low enough that it's better than spending your capital. But sometimes the cost of borrowing money is too expensive, and you need to spend some capital out of your pocket. I make that decision all the time in my personal life with my house and the things that I own and the tools that I buy to do whatever it is that I'm working on next. You make that decision. We're doing the exact same thing. We are doing the prudent thing by finding capital in places all over the budget in order to fund this one thing that we know we desperately need. So there is nothing shady going on here that we're trying to circumvent the voters or trying to do an end run on the budget process. It's not that at all. It's setting a priority, replacing a piece of fire apparatus, and then finding the money to do it without having to add to the debt service. That is the most responsible thing that we could do. Is it uncomfortable? Does it mean we've had to say no to other things in the capital budget? Yes. Are we reallocating some ARPA money? Yes. Are we reallocating some leftover capital that's in this current budget? Yes. We're finding pockets of money any way we can so that we don't have to borrow for this truck that has doubled in price in the last 5 years. I don't see how you can object to that. And with that, I yield the floor.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion? Alderman Bettencourt, please.
All right, so regarding Squad A, I'm going to say that I'm going to agree with Alderman DeLucia that finding the money in capital rather than bonding is the most prudent way to do it. When you have these kind of expenditures, in general, and I've heard this from many people over the years, that we should be doing it that way. Find the money in those envelopes rather than having to bond it. Sometimes we haven't. Well, most of the time we haven't, let's face it. But this time we're trying to do that, and I think that's the responsible take. The other piece in here, which is a lot more than what we're talking about for Squad A, as far as the budget goes, is on Exhibit C, the $2.4 million additional for the school board, for the Board of Education. Now, I will say that I think the big issue, obviously, it's a lot of money. But the fact of the matter is, shortly after this, in the next month or two, we're going to be allocating another $3 million, some out of their non-lapsing fund, emptying that out, and taking some additional revenue that wasn't forecasted for the current year's budget, and moving that allocation to pay for a $3 million deficit for the Board of Ed. That means they were under, and the reasons for that are myriad, but a lot of things, for instance, are, state unfunded mandates like special education costs and the like. So can you complain that maybe the Board of Ed could have done a better job? Yeah, we can complain about everything, but the fact of the matter is they don't have a lot of costs that aren't fixed. So, and the fact of the matter, those things can change. Somebody moves into Norwich that has, and special education costs can run, like $250,000 upwards of that amount of money for a severely disabled person. So, and those things we don't have options on those things. Those are all state unfunded mandates, never mind the other issues that we currently have. So the fact of the matter is that we should be funding them at a level that's at least honest, where they can deliver the services and get, have a chance of getting the job done. But what's happened this last year's budget, that didn't happen. So I think through the ad hoc committee, there were certainly reductions. The administration for the Board of Education, they certainly came to the table, and people worked trying to get the number to a more reasoned level. And I think I wasn't on the ad hoc committee, But certainly the results show that, so that we're in this situation here. So I'm going to support that, and, you know, honestly, the whole thing stinks, but there's not much that you can say. It is what it is. You either pay now or you pay later. So you can pay up front, or we can, you know, engage in this exercise again in a year regarding, you know, shortages or in the Board of Ed budget. And I don't think that's the right way to do it either. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion on the amendment before us? Yes, Alderman Singh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So I just have a small comment, you know, instead of question. So I will just say, you know, it is an important day for all of us. We all are taxpayers, you know, and, you know, even though we don't see a lot of people, but we do get calls and emails and people are concerned. And I just want to say this was not an easy year for our council, with all the assessments being up as well, which will impact everyone's bottom line no matter what we do. But I also want to take a time to thank City Manager for understanding our priorities, that we want to minimize the impact of assessment. We want to fund the schools appropriately, and we want to address and make our city more safer. Also, I just want to recognize Josh because, you know, and our city attorney, because we also need guidance. And I just want to recognize them because they were good guiding force as well, and always try to correct us when we were trying to go out of line. So thank you for that. And I also want to thank our members of Democratic Caucus and President Pro Tem for his efforts in coordinating all the discussions. So at the end, I will just say to taxpayers, this is not that you might like, but this is the reality. And we need to fund schools appropriately so we don't end up in the hole like Alderman Mark Benko said, that now we have to find another $3 million just because we didn't fund the schools properly. Every department has their unique role in making Norwich better, and we understand, you know, we have to take some of the funding out. But next year is another budget cycle. And we respect all the departments for all the work they have been doing, and we will try our best to accommodate their request in the next budget. Again, I just want to thank BOE because they did tremendous job in reducing the gap, and they need some recognition. So thank you very much for all the work. And I will just say, we do need to have an increase in our grant list growth, and that's the only way to save Norwich. And we should put all our effort towards that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion on the amendment before us? Alderman Nash.
I really don't have nothing to say about the amendment in front of us, just a personal comment. I want to tell the taxpayers out there, I'm really sorry about what's about to happen to you. There's nothing I can do to stop it. I don't agree with some of the changes here. I don't agree with some of the purchases. I don't agree with some of the cuts. But there's literally nothing I can do. There's three of us up here, and we're not going to sway anyway. So I do apologize. You're going to be paying way more than you thought you were going to pay by the end of this budget. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion? I spoke a lot about the purchase of a fire truck. I will speak about the education department. I am extremely grateful for the new acting superintendent and her staff, particularly Jamie, who came back from retirement. How many people would do that? That really demonstrates their sincere commitment to a better education system here in the city of Norwich. But every dollar you spend this year is not available unless you again increase taxes next year. And I will remind everyone on this council that and I've said this before, we're building new schools. We hope to break ground 2 of those new schools next year. We must fund the entire amount of the school's cost. Right now, Greenville's $22 million over budget. Stanton is $2.6 million over budget. If the number has changed since the last time I read them, I'd love to see it be going down, but I haven't heard it is. Those funds are coming against the taxpayers because we will have to sell the bonds for both schools, 100%. Do the math, that's 68 million plus for Greenville. It was 62.6 for Stanton. Again, I hope I have my numbers correct. Add those up, that's almost $130 million, and that's just the first two projects. The bond council has made it clear, if we can't build all of those schools with the money that was allocated, $385 million, we can't start a single project. That's exactly what he said, because when the voters voted for the bond, it was all 6. Not the ones you favor, not your favorite school, not the ones you want to ignore and not go forward and do it. You have to do all 6. I don't know where you think the money's going to come from, but when I see tax increases, and I'm not talking mil, I'm talking dollars, over $2,000 a household, $1,800, $1,490. I handed out a list to the council members tonight. I went and asked questions to learn more about what this tax impact would do to the taxpayers of this city. I don't know if they did that themselves. If they did, I'd be interested to hear what they learned. This is from our comptroller's office and the assessor's office. These are the real numbers. Someone who paid $460,000 last year will now pay $6,262. Do you know how many seniors live in this town? Fixed incomes? Where are they going to get the money? We carry about $12 million in debt service right now. Comptroller, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's around that. That's going to double in the next 5 years for these schools. Annually, you will be paying that. I will be paying that. Where's the money going to come from? It's not separate bags of money. It's the same pot, our grand list. It grew 33% this year. That's good growth. But that's part of the reason these new tax bills are so heavy, even though the mill rate's coming down. The shift was to residential. I was told at the beginning the average was a 60% increase across the city. Have we forgotten that? Buying a fire truck that was already deemed that should not be replaced, and I listened to the chief talk about the numbers, the calls that go on. Everyone knows that 2/3 of the calls of Central are with the ambulance calls. Doesn't matter what truck goes out of the house. Are those real fire calls? Fire departments exist for structure fires. And with the increase in improvement in the fire codes and inspections, we don't have fires like we used to. Something else that fire study said, they were overstaffed. No one's mentioned that tonight, but I am. You know, some people pick winners and losers from that fire study, and that's what only gets to the floor. Mr. Comptroller, can you tell us where the capital account now sits? What's the percentage of our last year's budget? You have to do a minimum of 2%. Where do we stand?
So this year's capital is a total of $2,894,314.
And what is that, about 2.5% of the last year's budget, roughly, or more or less?
That would be 2% of last year's budget. Just 2.
So that's the minimum.
Right.
Okay. Well, let's be honest. We have to spend a minimum 2% each year. That's required by charter. We're tonight questioning some of the choices, but we must spend 2%. What we're witnessing, and I'll end on this note, it's not a good note, it's not a kind note, but it's the reality. Significant campaign contributions have bought votes of this council. Go back and look at the Democrats' report, last filing, last fall. Tremendous dollar values in PAC contributions are driving how they're spending money, the 4 Democrats. That includes this fire truck. They made a commitment, they're delivering it. They kept their word, but it doesn't help the taxpayers. And that should be our first priority. This, may I say and remind, is a distressed municipality. That means we're poor. I wish we were not. We've had significant growth in the grand list. But if we don't spend the money wisely and restrictive this year, the money's not there next year to sell the bonds and pay for them. So the only choice we have is another massive tax increase next year. And for those reasons, I'll be opposing this amendment. Thank you. Alderman Bettencourt.
So, since you kind of went off topic, I'm going to answer what some of the things you went through. So, as far as the school commitment goes, we got a grant commitment for the first two schools, Greenville and Stanton. And so right now, we're on an ongoing reimbursement. So as we receive invoices for cost, those are submitted to the controller's office, and they'll be reimbursed by the state as that system's set up. So, so your information's a little inaccurate. You're pretty close as far as the estimates for Greenville being over. I think there's serious issues there. Stanton's a little more manageable, but those are things we'll have to discuss at some point. But and I will point out that obviously the big problem with the budget this year was, and we'll back on the amendment in the budget, is the fact of the matter is that we shifted money from commercial to residential in the overall grand list. I think if we had done a better job at economic development, maybe we wouldn't be having some of this problem. To be fair, though, other municipalities are having this issue too. But obviously, the shifts we've had in the grand list have contributed to the impact for residents in the city of Norwich. So I would look at yourself, Mr. Mayor, as a person that should be responsible for that and has failed in their mission. So.
Is further discussion? Just a quick response. As an example, that's why I so strongly supported the Ockham Business Park, because within that land, there's the solution to pay for most of the schools, and that's really important. That's not a failure, that's something that takes time and takes consideration and permits and state approvals and state funds, which we have been able to receive $11.4 million for the interior road. Economic development doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it's keeping companies that were about to leave in this city and watching them grow. Like Blastpack. They were looking to leave years ago. I spent 3 years working with them. They stayed and they expanded here. A large investment, they added more jobs. And we have other existing companies, one of which you're aware of, everyone on this council is, we're working with them to make sure they stay as well. Retention is really important. There's no magic bullet. But spending too much money on appropriations, which is what we're asked to do tonight, works against all those efforts. If you keep raising taxes on the residents, you don't think the commercials taxes are going up too? Top 10 taxpayers and utility users are in the town area. Keep raising the taxes on the TCD, which this budget will do. We'll see how many of them stay, in spite of everyone's effort. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Alderwoman Gould.
As hard as we've worked to lower the mill rate, for 23-24, the mill rate was 42.18. That is not an attractive number to bring anybody to the city of Norwich. And unfortunately, a lot of people depend on their phone for their information. If you go to Zwillow and look at what they rate the schools at, unfairly, our schools are rated at 3. Some of them are at 2. So if you're not from the area and you go on that website and you see a 42 mill rate and you see your schools are at 2 or 3, you ought to maybe you don't do your due diligence to find out what really is going on in the school system, and you pass up Norwich. We are a distressed municipality. And we got a sheet here that was provided from the assessor's office and from the finance department talking about someone's assessment in October of 2022. And the most expensive assessment on here, and I don't know how they decided what samplings to take, but if in 2022, your assessment was $133,000 for your home, your new assessment is $214,000. Now, if you're a seller, you're very happy. You're trying to buy, you're not so happy. Your taxes, so your increase in your assessment is 60%, which equates to a 27% increase in your tax bill. So you will go from paying $6,400 to $8,200 for our seniors, for people on a fixed income, for young families trying to start out in the city of Norwich, with the price of gas, with the price of utilities, with the price of food, with the price of medicine. Everyone will be making choices. And unfortunately, some of the choices will not be good, because maybe they won't pay their utility bill, or maybe they won't get the medicine that they need. Maybe they won't have enough food in their home. We should have done a better job at trying to reduce the mill rate, because the mill rate artificially is going down because all of the assessments are going up. But we are going to have people, there's no example on here of someone who who had a home assessed at $200,000 or $300,000. So God only knows what they're going to be paying. But all of these increases, 40%, 27%, 48% for somebody's home on the east side that was once assessed at $77,000 is now assessed at $145,000. It's a 48% increase in their taxes. That's going to hurt a lot of people. And as Alderman Nash said, 3 of us up here, our hands are tied. There's nothing that we can do or say to reduce the burden to our taxpayers. So you will see your mill rates go down, but your taxes will go up, and that's just the harsh reality of the city of Norwich in its current state. But I will be voting against any amendments to decimate capital budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please, on the amendment.
Alderman Nash?
No.
Alderwoman Hayes?
Yes.
Alderman Bettencourt?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould? Alderman Singh? Yes. President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
No. The resolution is adopted 4-3. And the resolution before us as amended, is there further discussion? Pro Tem, please.
We now need to add just a phrase to it, coming down to the 5th line of the resolved, where it says, was submitted by the city manager on April 1st, 2024, as amended and tentatively adopted by the council of the city of Norwich on May 6, 2024. We need to now add, and as further amended by the council on June 10th, 2024.
That is correct. Is there a second, please? Alderman Nash? Does everyone have that language?
Alderman Nash?
On the amendment.
On the amendment, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Alderwoman Hayes?
Yes.
Alderman Bettencourt?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould,
Yes.
Alderman Singh. Yes. President Pro Tem DeLucia.
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom.
Yes, on the amendment. Amendment is adopted 7-0. On the resolution as further amended, is there discussion? Roll call, please. Apologize.
So, there's no two ways about it. I would prefer to use a different language probably, but if you know me, but the budget stinks. I got to pay more. Everybody up here is going to have to pay more. I certainly don't want to pay more, but I don't have a better option. No one else has proposed any other cuts, so I'm not sure what else to do. We have a couple $100,000 in cuts from the other amendment. There is some other stuff. The reallocation of capital does not impact the mill rate because we're obligated to spend the money in capital. So the big one, obviously, is the Board of Ed issue. And the problem there, obviously, and I've already said this when we were talking about the amendment, is the fact of the matter is if we don't do that, we're going to be paying again later. And I just don't see the rationale for doing that. So we're going to have to take money out of the fund balance, I believe, Josh, you said, as well as removing the money from the non-lapsing account. This is something we got to straighten out with the current year budget. So to cover the shortfalls for this year. And that just isn't right. So I think you have to be more upfront about what everything is actually costing. Don't have to like it. I don't like it. But I don't think I got a choice but to support it. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there further comment? Alderman Nash.
Say, as far as the school budget goes, listen, I sit up here because I think I am just a regular person, and I'm not a genius, and I'm not the smartest person in the room, because if I was, I'd try and find another room. The point I'm trying to make is that I've seen studies, and I don't know how to quantify them to the Board of Ed, but there are studies out there that show you do not need to keep throwing money at schools to increase its academic worthiness or its benefit to a community. In fact, there are many studies that show the complete opposite of that. And I challenge anybody in the school system. You're geniuses. You're all educated, college and everything. I commend you all for your hard work. Look at those studies and see what you can use in our school systems. There are studies out there, and I'm not that good on the internet, but I found them on the internet, that show you where throwing money at a school does not necessarily make it a better school. What I'd like to see, to be honest with you, is a complete forensic audit of the entire school system, all of it, everything, not just certain areas like pick and choose. I say the whole system. And I'm not trying to blame anybody for the reason why it's expensive. I get it. But let's see what it all is. Let's see exactly where the dollars are going and why we have this problem year after year. I've sat up here for a while now, and I've been called draconian, evil, hate children, all that stuff, because I don't necessarily support 9% increases in the school budget when other departments are getting nothing, or sometimes even cut. I have never sat here and cut the school budget. We didn't give you what you asked for or what you think you needed because we couldn't afford it. And I use analogies for a lot of stuff. I go grocery shopping. I'd love to buy steaks, but I can't. I buy pork chop if I even can afford pork chops, because that's what I have in my budget. If I want steak, something else comes out of the cart. And I know this is kind of real simplistic when I say this to the school board, but there are ways out there that you can save money. And that throwing $2 million now and another $3 million later, listen, it sucks for all of us. And we all have to try to do it. And I get it. You guys got kids coming in here and there's state mandates and federal mandates and we're not getting any support from them. But, I mean, you guys were, several $1 million in the hole when I was watching the news yesterday. New Haven's $11 million in the hole. And they complain that the state's not pitching in. So I commend the Democrats for doing this. I don't agree with it. I don't think we should be changing capital because the people that we're taking money from need that money too, to do the things they need to do for the city. So that's where I'm at. I challenge the school to look, and I'm sure you do, but I'm just going to say it anyway. Try to figure out how you can save money without throwing it constantly at the school and saying that's never enough. Because this year, whatever we give you, we got to give you next year. And I'm sure there'll be an increase there too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman Hayes, please.
So I'd like to weigh in on the school budget, school committee budget, Board of Education. So to Alderman Nash, your question about just reducing the school budget to reduce it. And I will say to you, they can. They could go in and slash and cut. But at what price are our children's education going to suffer? Because you can go in and purchase, you can go in and implement less costly programs if they're not scientifically based. If we still want to have schoolhouse to prison pipeline based on grade 3 scores, is that what we want to build? Prisons instead of schools, instead of improving schools? Then go ahead and slash the school board. Put the school board down, tell them slash your budget, so we can build more prisons. Because if that's what you're asking them to do, I, for one, advocate we need to address our children from the age of 3, their education, fighting for early education so children can read by the time they are in 3rd grade, so they can have careers, jobs, go to college, and not continue to cost us on the backside. Where do you want to put our money at? So I commend the school board ad hoc committee. I commend the Board of Education for reducing and giving us a fair budget. And that's why I will support it. But if they stand up here and say, just slash, cut, there's programs out there. Yes, there's programs out there. They're failures. Our kids are going to jail because those programs are failures. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, President Pro Tem.
I'll keep this short. I said this at the Board of Ed budget hearing when we were discussing why education is as expensive as it is. And I said then, because kids aren't 2x4s, right? Carpenter gets a load of lumber, it kicks out the 2x4s that are twisted, kicks out the 2x4s that are broken or bent or don't meet the standard for whatever's being built. Well, we don't have that option when we're dealing with kids. And Alderman Nash, I mean this as lightheartedly as I can say it. We both know what happens to the meat that can't become pork chops. It gets ground into sausage, right? And we cannot do that to our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion at this time? I'm going to end my comments this manner. Alderman Betancourt says there's no choice. There is a choice. Reject this budget as amended, and at midnight, the city manager's budget is adopted, and you save over $2.4 million, which I think the taxpayers would appreciate. They're the ones that pay the bills.
The tax impact is exactly the same, though, because we've done the math.
Explain that, please, since John did not provide a 6.9 increase to the Board of Education, which what you are asking us to vote for. He provided something at 4.3.
So by moving the things that we moved, I did the math on my own house. Now, without getting into a lot of detail, I had improvements to my house over the last 5 years, which I accept the tax liability for, of course, right? But if you minus out the tax impact of those improvements, my taxes are going to go up, we're going to go up about $1,208 because of the changes we made to, well, because of the entire budget, including the changes we made to the school board budget. What we have before us tonight makes that $1,254. So I'm not happy about having to spend another $100 a month. I'm on board with everybody else up here, and Mark Betancourt said it best, okay? I said it at the ad hoc meeting. I don't know where that $100 is gonna come from. I'm going to have to cut somewhere else in order to pay that, just like everybody else will be faced with making those hard decisions, household by household. It's not going to be easy, and it is not going to be without pain. But the changes that we're making across the board have much significantly less impact than the impact that we saw because of revaluation.
Well, thank you for the personal history. I think you're in for a very rude awakening. It's going to be substantially more than an additional $100. Just looking at the numbers that I shared with everyone here, that is not the case at all. Not even close. I dare say your house assessment probably isn't on this list because it's worth more. Because you're right, you have improved it a lot, and I know where you live. In the Cherry Hill section, the highest value house on this is $136,000 assessment for 2022. It's now $214,000. I'll bet yours is higher than that. That person's new tax is $1,630. If yours is higher, I suspect you're way off the mark. You decided to give your house as a sample. I'm not meaning to pick on your house or you, but this impact is weighted. And don't blame the reval. We'd be in worse position if our grand list hadn't grown 33%. Far worse. Is there further comment? Roll call, please.
Alderman Nash? Alderwoman Hayes?
Yes.
Alderman Bettencourt? Yes. Alderwoman Gould? No. Alderman Singh?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia? Yes. Mayor Nystrom?
The resolution on the budget for 2024 as amended is adopted 4-3.
Number 2, relative to the adoption of appropriations ordinance for fiscal year 2024-25.
Thank you. Would please the members to place this on the floor, please? Is there such a motion? Resolution 2, Alderman Bettencourt. Is there a second? Alderwoman Hayes.
Resolution 3?
Two.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Resolution 2. Josh, would you like to?
Yes, so this is the appropriations ordinance. I just would mention that the same amendment that Pro Tem DeLucia added right after May 6th, 2024, where it should be inserted, and as further amended on June 10th, 2024, and then continue B, and the same hereby is adopted.
Thank you. Is there a second? Make it a first. Apologies. President Pro Tem. Second amendment by Alderman Nash. Is there discussion on the language Josh shared with us? Seeing none,
Excuse me. Who was
roll call on the amendment. Pro Tem, and then Alderman Nash.
Alderman Nash?
On the amendment, yes.
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 Alderwoman Hayes?
Yes.
Alderman Bettencourt?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Singh? Yes. President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes. Resolution 2 is adopted 7-0 as amended. Oh, wait, that is the amendment. My apologies. Resolution 2 as amended. Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Nash? No. Alderwoman Hayes?
Yes.
Alderman Bettencourt? Yes. Alderwoman Gould?
No.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
No.
Thank you. Resolution 2 as amended is adopted 4-3.
Resolution number 3, relative to the adoption of tax levy ordinance for fiscal year 24-25.
Your motion, please, to bring this to the floor. Alderwoman Hayes, second Alderman Singh. Is there discussion? Please, Pro Tem.
I have a brief statement.
Go ahead, please.
As you've heard, this budget has been a particular challenge. Revaluation and the real estate market have shifted the grand list towards the residential property owners. In spite of this, the members of my caucus embraced our responsibilities and set the following goals. First was minimizing the impact of revaluation as best we could. Second was funding the BOE to the full amount recommended by the ad hoc committee. And third, closing some of the gap between the TCD and the CCD mill rates. This budget, while not perfect, meets those goals, although we will all feel the pain of somewhat higher taxes, as you've heard. What troubles me is the victim claiming and the negativity that has been said by the mayor and members of his caucus on the radio about how the Democrats did this and the Democrats did that, and blame for everyone who's been working to try to solve this problem. So let's remember that it was the Democrats on this council that held the line on taxation through 2 budget seasons, using over $2 million in ARPA money for tax relief. Let's remember that it was the Democrats on this council that built the BOE non-lapsing account to a $3.3 million surplus just 2 years ago. Let's remember that it was the ARPA allocations insisted upon by the Democratic members of this council and by State Representative Darrell Wilson that reached the most disenfranchised members of this community. Let us also remember, while we hear about how their hands were tied, the Republicans on this council drove the BOE from $1 million surplus to a multi-million-dollar deficit by intentionally underfunding the school budget. We tried it their way. It failed. Meanwhile, we have heard nothing from the mayor's caucus about finding solutions to today's budget puzzle. I'm sorry that I have to say this, but I'm disappointed. Alderwoman Gould, who is my right hand, my vice chair of the ad hoc committee, refused to even vote on the budget compromise that the ad hoc committee had come to after the Board of Ed walked $4.4 million in the council's direction, in the city's direction. And yet they criticize and point fingers. So I would ask that everyone stop playing the blame game on the Stu Breyer show and work to build the commercial and business tax base that we need to offset the shift toward residential taxation that we are experiencing right now. This budget, Alderman Betancourt said it, this budget stinks. And while the mayor might challenge me a little bit on my math, I would say with a smile, at your own peril, seeing as I'm kind of a math guy. But nonetheless, we are all feeling the pain that this community is going to feel when those tax bills come out at the end of the month. But the finger pointing and the victimizing is not going to get us any closer to finding the solutions. And with that, I will yield the floor.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? I saw someone's hand. Yes, Alderwoman Gould?
Mr. DeLucia, tell me when the last time you heard my voice on the radio?
Actually, when they invited me to be on the radio to discuss automatic aid, you called in and made half of a comment before you hung up and before I could respond.
I have never
Just
called
answering your question.
WICH when you were on the radio, so if someone portrayed it as me, I'm sorry, but if I made the phone call, I would have at least stayed on the line. So I don't know what you're talking about there, but I have not been on the radio. Number two, no one has intentionally underfunded the Board of Education. We gave the Board of Education what the taxpayers could afford. But let's talk about, and you know, we got $644,000 of ARPA money that we could have used for something else, but we're going to use that for Squad A. Stay tuned. But let's talk about something more important. The four of you and the three of us don't ever discuss anything. I thought it was your job as the pro tem to be a leader. But it's always about, my caucus wants this. My caucus wants that. We don't care about your caucus. That's what you tell us. We don't care what you want. This is what we want. This is what we're going to do. You have 4 votes. We have 3.
I have not said those words. I have
Oh,
never
no, you've said many times, our caucus wants. Our caucus decided. Our caucus is supporting this. Our caucus this. Many a times. And as far as being your right hand on the ad hoc committee, you and I have never had one conversation about the ad hoc committee. So instead of working, we should all, every one of us, should be working together to be doing what's right for the city of Norwich. Instead of, I'm a D, this is what I want. You're an R, that's what you get. So let's stop now pretending like we all work together, because we don't. And maybe this will be the start of working together moving forward. But if your caucus had worked so hard, the mill rate wouldn't be 33.51 or 38.47. It would be a number lower than that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Pro Tem?
I don't want to argue, I just want to just respond to a couple of things. First and foremost, I have never said, ever said, that I don't care what the Republican caucus wants, ever. Number two, I won't say fondly remember, but I enjoyed the fact that when we were first both appointed to the ad hoc committee, we spent many instances and much time at the foot of my driveway discussing Board of Ed issues, Board of Ed fiscal issues, and the Board of Ed budget. And lastly, when I do say in a meeting that my caucus wants to do this, or my caucus wants to do that, or my caucus has set a goal, that, in my book, and everything I know about leadership, is leadership. It's not, Joe DeLucia wants this. Ask any of the people in my caucus. I'll say, I'd like to do this, and we discuss it. And there are times when the answer is, nah, we're not with you on that. Okay? But when I say, my caucus wants this, or my caucus wants that, I am representing all 4 members in my caucus, not just my personal agenda. That is a hallmark of leadership. And with that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion at this time? Alderman Bettencourt.
I wish this didn't have to be said, but let's face it, the caucus system stinks, too, you know? And Mayor, you know, when you had the majority, you were a fine example of that, too. So there's plenty of blame up here to go around for each and every person up here. So let's face it, people in the caucus discussion will say things, you know, more honestly, and we enact as a working group to try to get things done. If someone else from the other side had brought things to the table to discuss, we'd certainly discuss them. You know, and if there's something viable there, hey, let's do it, if we're gonna save money. But there was nothing brought to the table. So what are you supposed to do? So we have what we had, and that's the way, and that's how the process works, unfortunately. So right now, anyway. It would be nice if we could do it differently. I would love to do it differently. I think you know that. But the fact of the matter is, that's the way things have been happening here for quite a while now. Not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying that that's how it's been.
Thank you. Is there further discussion, Alderman Singh?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just want to remind last budget cycle. Seems like it's not Democrat or Republican issue. We all know we were underfunding the BOE. When I made a amendment to add another $500,000 to BOE budget, and it was seconded by Alderman Nash. So I guess in our hearts, we know this was not that they deserve. So it's beyond party lines. But, you know, I just want to say, you know, nobody's trying to just force things. And when we talk about caucus, I think it's more about consensus. When things are brought to our attention, how to handle those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Nash.
Yeah, I'll just say this. I've sat up here again for a while, and I've never intentionally underfunded anybody. I remember the one year we did a 5% decrease for everybody but the Board of Ed. I remember years where we gave no increases to any other department but the Board of Ed. So I have never sat up here and deliberately said, the heck with them, I am not giving them. I gave them what the city could afford to give them. Like any negotiations, you want something, you give something. So if I ask for 9% and I get 5 or 4, that's the way it works. It's called negotiations. And as far as caucuses go, I have never sat up here and gave two craps about Democrat or Republican. What I did care about was taking care of the city and doing what I thought was in the best interest of everybody. Children, fire departments, police department, public works, it's senior citizens, it doesn't matter. And sometimes you had to make tough decisions. So if it come across as I deliberately underfunded any department, then I apologize, because that was never, ever in the forefront or the back thought of my mind. And as far as caucuses go, you can look at my record. I have voted as much against my own party as I have voted with my party. So I don't care about caucuses. We have discussions. I get educated on certain things. Mr. Bettencourt and I, for years, worked on the budget together at his house, drinking beers and talking about how to save money, okay? And we did that. And he's a Democrat and I'm a Republican. It didn't matter to me what he was. He was a friend, and we sat and did that together. Sometimes we came up with some good stuff. Sometimes we came up with nothing. Buckus, because there was nothing. The well was dry. So I don't want everyone to understand. And I have not called Stu Breyer in about a year and a half, maybe 2. So I don't know what Mr. DeLucia is talking about if he thinks I called, because I never did. So have a good night, everybody. We're going to vote on this, and let's go. I'd like to move the question.
Second.
What's that?
You need an amendment to adopt it.
Corporate Counsel has reminded me that this particular question may need to be amended.
Okay. I withdraw
Michael,
my
would
second.
you reference that, please? Into the microphone.
Simply to install the, as amended on June 10th, 2024. It's the lead up to it. The terms may not change in this, but this date has led to the numbers that are in this.
Everyone clear? We're basically saying the same language. Josh, do you want to proctor it to us, please?
Sure, yeah, well, I also have to give you the updated numbers.
Correct.
For the mill rates. So, starting with after, in the paragraph beginning resolved, after May 6, 2024, the following should be inserted, and as further amended on June 10th, 2024. And then in section 1, the mill rate of 32.99 mils should replace where it currently says 32.29. And in section 2, the mill rate of 0.26 should replace what is currently 0.27. And in section 3, the mill rate of 5.21 should replace what's currently listed as 5.23.
It says 5.23 on this version.
Yeah, it
Should say
should say
5.21, he said.
5.21.
Okay, thank you.
Section 4?
Yeah, section 4.
That one remains the same. That's the amount of the motor vehicle tax cap.
Those are the changes you recommend?
Yes.
Okay, everyone clear on that? Okay, could I have a first and a second amendment, please, to place them? Alderman Nash, second Alderman Bettencourt. Is there further discussion on the amendments offered? Seeing none, roll call on the amendment.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
Alderwoman Hayes?
Yes.
Alderman Bettencourt?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Singh? Yes. President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes?
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes. The amendment that is offered is adopted 7-0. Is there further discussion on Resolution 3 as amended? Roll call, please.
Alderman Nash?
No.
Alderwoman Hayes?
Yes.
Alderman Bettencourt?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
No.
Alderman Singh? Yes. President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes?
Mayor Nystrom?
No. Thank you. Resolution 3 is adopted 4-3.
Adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Alderwoman Gould. Is there a second? Alderman Nash. Roll call, please.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
Alderwoman Hayes?
Yes.
Alderman Bettencourt?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Singh?
Yes.
President Pro Tem DeLucia?
Yes?
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes. Thank you. The motion to adjourn is adopted 7-0.